Okay, we're back. Okay. um, Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Black Girl's Orbit. I am your host, Zara. It's nice to see you. This is episode 11. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. This is going to come out the day of Valentine's Day. So if you're watching it today, happy Valentine's Day. If not, I hope you had a happy Valentine's Day whenever Valentine's Day is, or just sending you some love today, regardless of what day it is. Um, Last week we talked about self-love, everything self-love, and today we're going to talk about the 10 things, or like 10 things I've learned in love. Now listen to me. Listen. Quick disclaimer. I am only 23. I'm only 23. I know to me it feels like I'm so old. I'm not. I'm actually just a little baby, especially when it comes to love. So these are my 10 things. They're very personal to me. While some of them I feel like are universal things that you could learn in love or learn about love as you grow, as you experience more life. I am still just a little baby in this game, okay? I'm a little baby. So they're very specific to me, okay? I'm not going to sit here and say that I've experienced everything in the world. I have experienced all types of love in the world. I'm not going to sit here and say that. But I feel like I have a good sense of security and understanding of what I think a good love is and what kind of love I'm striving for. And yeah, how I feel loved within myself and all of those things. So we're going to talk about 10 things today. And so if you don't want to hear from someone who's younger than you, this is your time. You can leave. I'm not begging you to be here because I'm not trying to get into a situation where everyone's like, well, if you just experienced a bit more life, I get it. I know. I get it. I know. But I've had enough experiences for me to have 10 things to say. So we're going to talk about the 10 things that I have to say today. Okay? Okay. So, number one, let me get out my trusty handy dandy notes. Yeah, needed the disclaimer. I feel like we needed the disclaimer because everybody's experience of love and understanding of love is going to be completely different, and that's okay. And that's actually, maybe we should start here. Number one, everybody's understanding, idea of, and ideal of love is different, and you cannot expect someone to automatically know what yours is based on theirs because they will have no idea. Like, I feel like we go into love expecting everybody else to know what love is, or like what love is to you, and we forget that love is actually very subjective. While we have like some broad understanding of like what romance is, love and romance are two very different things. Romance is kind of like what society depicts it as, right? We watch movies on it as we're young girls. We kind of figure out what we want. It's always like what the men are doing to us, all of those things. And as we get older, society becomes more and more indoctrinated. We become more and more indoctrinated in what we think romance is, and then we start to justify that as love. And the two are very separate. Romance and love are not the same. And so when you meet someone and you meet people, you're expecting them to have the same depiction of love or understanding of love that you have, and that is impossible because love is based off of so many things that are subjective. Like, people's understanding or experiences of love are so different and vast from each other that when you meet someone, you cannot expect them to see love the same way you see it. And so that was the first big lesson I had to learn, is that we have to communication. We have to have some kind of communication about what other people's version of love is. And that's not just like with a partner, that's with friends, because how friends show up for you, how they care for you, how they root for you, how they talk to you, all of those things are going to be based on how they were talked to and loved as they were growing. And you are going to expect or want something from them based on all the things that you've gone through, and they might have a completely different idea of like love and how to show love, platonically or romantically or in a relationship or intimately, right? Those things differ depending on the person. And so love is subjective. The idea of love is subjective. Everybody's idea of love is subjective to them and their upbringing and their understanding of themselves. Now, in order to know that, you have to understand where yours comes from, because I think in order to understand that everybody's idea of love is different, you have to first understand what your idea of love is. Because we can, like, I can sit here and kind of like have a little bit of understanding inclination that, like, oh, she don't love the same way I do, or that friend doesn't show love to me the same way I show love to them. But like, why do you show love the way that you do? Like, in order to understand your friend a bit more, you should understand why you show love that way, and then you can go out and be a bit more empathetic that people aren't going to have or give you the same love that you want or show, or the same idea of love that you have, right? Going back and understanding, and we talked a little bit about this last week in the self-love episode, so if you haven't seen that, go watch that. In the self-love episode, where we was talking about how in order to fully understand who we are and why we have this idea of love that we have now, we have to go back. And understanding love and learning about love means figuring out where it is that our love languages came from, where it is that our idea of love comes from, right? And going back and being like, oh, this is how my mom treated me when I was younger, this is how my dad treated me when I was younger, this is why, these are the experiences that I've been through when I was younger, or as I was growing, or in parts of my life, and hence why I'm here now, have this current idea of love. And so then when you meet others who don't show up in love the same way that you do, or don't have the same idea as love that you do, of love that you do, and you can sit down and be like, oh, why? Like, you know, like, what were your experiences, or what was your love language growing up, or how did your parents treat you, or what have you been through in love, and why are we at this point? You know, so that you can learn a bit more about the people around you, because you can't, you can't, maybe this is number 3, you cannot expect you from everyone. Like, you can't expect you from everybody. And by that, I mean, you cannot expect the love that you give, or the idea of love that you have, from everyone. Like we said, love is subjective to individuals. And so some of that is accepting that your love is your love. And it might take a moment, it might take a couple of months, it might take a couple of years for people to get on the same page as you with that. Now, it doesn't mean that when people aren't loving us the way that we want to be loved, or the way that we show love, that like we should just give them all the time in the world. No, that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. It means that maybe there is some like acceptance of like, okay, that person is just never going to get on the same page as me, or that person loves a bit differently than I do, and am I okay to accept that? Like, understanding it, seeing it, understanding it, and then you can make a decision based on whether or not you're okay with it, right? But if you don't know that everybody loves different, you can sit there waiting for them to get on the same page as you, or expecting them to get on the same page as you, or wanting them to get on the same page as you, and they never do. They may never, because their understanding and idea of love is going to be completely different than yours. And so you have to get to a stage where it's like, am I going to be okay with how they show love? No. Do they intend on changing the way that they show love or show up in love? No. Okay, this is their idea of love, and then this is their ideal of love, but they have no intention of getting to that ideal, or their ideal of love and my ideal of love is two very different things, and so we're not compatible, right? And that requires you to, one, know that their love language and your love language, and their idea of love and your idea of love is going to be different first. Then understanding where theirs comes from and why they may not want to change it or have any intention to change it because of the things that they've been through. And then understanding, okay, like, I can accept that theirs is different than mine and we're just going to part ways. Or I accept that theirs is different than mine and I can get on the same page as theirs. Or like, I can take, I can learn from theirs. Or maybe I really like how they see love and I need to learn a bit of that. And so, we can learn from each other. I don't know what that word is that I was trying to say, but we can learn from each other. Right? And I feel like we tend to do that. I tended to do that with women. I feel like we are drawn to women that we either really like something about them, like an aura, a vibe, how they show up in the world, or we have a lot of similarities and commonalities with them. And a lot of the time when it's a woman that you're like, oh, there's something about her that I just really like, I want to be around her, you make friends with that person, and then you realize, oh, it's because some of the morals and identities that they have resonate with me. I'm trying to be like that. I'm trying to get a little bit more like that. And so maybe from her I can learn a few things, or how she shows up for her friends I really love, and I'm trying to show up for my friends like that, or I know I need to be shown up for like that, and so I'm drawn to that, right? And so men do it too in relationships. You'll see a man is drawn to how that woman shows up in love, how she shows love to them, and isn't necessarily worried about how they're showing love to her, right? They don't necessarily think about how to reciprocate that because their idea of love is different. They just like how her idea of love makes her show up. They don't have the same one as her. They just like how it makes her show up. And so that's where you can get into situations where it's like, you see when men are like, oh, I like what she does for me, I like how she loves me, I like how she does this and this and this. That's because he likes her idea of love. He likes how she shows love. He enjoys reaping the rewards of her love languages for herself. He enjoys her ideal of love, of her showing up like that, but it doesn't mean that he has the same one, intends to have the same one, or intends to do the work to get to a place where he can give her and reciprocate the same idea of love, the same practices of love, the same actions of love. It doesn't mean that. And that's hard. That's hard. It's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's the truth. It's the truth. So yeah, not everybody loves and has the same idea of love as you do, and we have to accept that. We have to accept that and stop trying to make people have the same idea of love as us. I think with that also comes that how we show love isn't necessarily how people want to be loved, because their idea of love is going to be different. And I think this is a big lesson that you start to learn when you get into relationships. Just because I want to be loved this way doesn't mean you want to be loved this way. And I was watching a podcast yesterday. You know, I never remember the names of these, so I'll put it in the description. But a guest that they had on their podcast, they were saying, he said he has a hot take on romance, and that it was women aren't actually as romantic as they think, because their idea of romance is everything that gets done to them and not things that they do for others. And I'm inclined to agree with him. I am also inclined to agree with him. I think the two ladies who do the podcast also agreed with him, because the thing is that we watch so much about like what romance is and how love is shown and how love is given to us, like in fairy tales and men on horses coming to save us, all of those things. And we don't actually realize that that actually has absolutely nothing to do with how we show love. That's how we want love to be shown to us. It's a bit, yeah. So when it comes to, now this is not everyone. I know a lot of very romantic women. Like, I am a romantic woman, not in the sense of like I like romance given to me. Yes, I do, but I also enjoy being romantic. Like, I enjoy the act of creating a romantic moment for my partner. But not every woman is like that. A lot of women like romance being done to them. They like the hotel rooms being given to them. They like the balloons for them. They like the surprises for them. They like the bouquet of flowers for them. They're not necessarily inclined to reciprocate those actions. And this is where you have to understand that the way someone wants to be shown love is something that you have to prioritize but as well as how you want to be shown love. When you start to get into relationships and when you start to experience a love that has to be reciprocated, if we both don't have the same idea of love, we both don't have the same love languages, then how I want to be shown love isn't how I can show love for you, because then it means that you are not feeling loved. because my idea of love and your idea of love is two completely different things. So when it comes to me making sure that you feel loved, I have to go in my warehouse and be like, how does my partner, how does my person feel loved? How does my what's my person's idea of love? What's my person's ideal of love? Like, how is the most ideal person, like, way that I can show love to them? What's the most romantic thing that I can do for them that makes them feel seen, that makes them feel heard, that makes them feel thought about? What can I do that does that and has absolutely nothing to do with how I want to be loved? Because they're not the same, right? And that's a big lesson. And I feel like certain lessons in love, while like we can go and have some understanding of love just through ourselves and the things that we've learned as we gotten older and how our parents showed love to talk to us and all those things, a lot of like love lessons require being in experiences and being in intimate situations, being in romantic situations, and being in platonic love situations where you realize like other people also have love languages and other people also need to be shown up for differently than how I want them showing up for me. So I can say that my love language is gift giving as much as I want, but I cannot be giving gifts to people who want quality time. They're not going to feel loved. They might feel appreciated, they might feel like thought about, but they're not going to feel loved in their core because their love language is quality time. So I need to give them quality time for them to feel loved. You know? So that's the only way that you can do that. Understanding that people need to be loved how they feel they need to be loved, not how you need to be loved. You can't love people how you need to be loved. You need to love them how they need to be loved and be on their page. And sometimes that looks like, you know, a little bit of sacrifice on your part or a little bit of showing up on your part, a little bit more work on your part because you're so used to showing love the way that you want to be loved. And yes, treat yourself how you want to be treated 110%. But then when that person does come, when your person does come around you, you have to treat them how they want to be treated. It's all part and part, like these are things that you have to learn and, come to accept that that's what you will have to do. And I think when people say like, relationships are hard, that's a part of it, is understanding that their idea and my idea are different. Their upbringing and my upbringing are different, and therefore we have different versions of this thing called love. And while, yes, we are working on something together, it also requires us nurturing their part and nurturing my part at the same time. And understanding that we're two different people. While, yes, we want to come into union, we want to come into partnership. Yes, 110%. But we are two different people with two different experiences. And so two different ideas of love. Now, you can meet someone who has the exact same idea of love as you. You guys are working towards the same ideal. You guys have the same love languages. Of course you can. And then it's like, great, cool. Don't have to think about anything, because the same things that would make me happy and feel loved are the same things that would make them feel happy and feel loved, of course. And that's where like that discernment comes in. If their love language is different than mine, am I okay to deal with that? Can I show up for them where they're at with their love language? Yes or no? Maybe not. Maybe not, and that's okay. That's okay. I don't know what we're on. I now have not. Yeah, I have no idea where we're at. I'm just going to go on to the next one. And I think that goes well into the fact that love requires action. I don't know what number we're on. I don't know where we're at. But love requires action, because it's not just about the feelings now that you have for that person. You can have all the feelings in the world for this person. You can feel all the types of way for this person. You can care for this person so deeply and feel like you are in love. However, that love now requires you to take action. And this is where it's like relationships are hard again. Like it's all this whole thing because it's a daily thing that you have to put into practice, especially, particularly when your idea of love and the other person's idea of love is different. Because when they're the same, it doesn't really take much thought for you to show up as though you love them, because how you love and how they love are the same. So it's like, oh, I want to do a movie night. They're like, yeah, I love to do a movie night too. So we just both sit here and spend quality time together. Or, you know, I bought you this gift and I was thinking about you when I was in the shop, so I bought you something. And they'll do the same thing. I was thinking about you when I was in the shop, so I bought you something. When your idea of love and their idea of love is easy, to not have to feel like you're still taking action, but you're taking action aligned with your same idea of love. When you have to take action aligned with an idea of love that's not the same as yours, or maybe healing somebody else's, because oftentimes we fall for someone and then we realize that their love languages, their idea of love, their understanding of love is based a lot on the things that they've been through, and there's a lot of healing that they need to go through. So then if you have ended up in a situation or a partnership where you have picked a person who has a different idea of love than you do, but they want the same ideal of love that you do. They want to get to a point where they are giving you the love that you also need, and they want to get to that point. They might not be there yet. They might show parts and bits of it here and there, but like daily, they don't really understand that. They were never shown that. They never, put that in the forefront of their being, because maybe they didn't have that growing up, or they weren't in other situations, or they have just been in situations where parts of them isn't necessarily intimate or comfortable to come to that understanding of this thing called love yet. While they know that they feel it for you, their actions may not align in that area all the time. And that's like trauma and stuff like that. Or it can go into like, situations with intimacy and stuff like that they've been through, and experiences with intimacy where they can feel so deeply for you, but how they show up in that can be tainted. How they show up in that can be different, because or they may not always feel comfortable there, or all of those things. They may not feel comfortable to be vulnerable and all of those things because of the stuff that they have been through. And you in that situation have to get comfortable with the fact that I'm going to help through how I show love, and through learning about them, I have to get to a place where I'm comfortable enough to heal them, to help heal them through love, to help heal their idea of love through love. And that requires a lot of action. That requires a lot of understanding. That requires a lot of grace and a lot of, respect and gratitude. That requires a lot of gratitude. That requires a lot of respect. It requires a lot of acceptance of that person. And I think like now we're getting to like the deep sense of like love. And I feel like, yes, love is action, daily consistent action. Love is also the understanding of someone in their being, like not just I love you, yeah, I have this feeling. But if you're going through the process of trying to love someone through healing them, love someone into feeling more vulnerable and more confident with you, or loving them through their trauma, loving them in sight of their trauma, loving them regardless of what's going on with them and what they've been through, then it becomes a sense of like loving them through grace and understanding and acceptance and forgiveness. Like a deep sense of love is a deep sense of forgiveness for them and how they may show up. It's giving them grace in that. And a lot of us will say, yeah, I know love and I've been loved and I give love. But it's like, you don't forgive anyone though. You actually don't know how to forgive people. Like, you don't know how to forgive people and keep them in your lives. And it might be shade to you, but it was shade to me, because you see me in my brain, it's like I can love you from a distance. I can care enough about you and want the best for you, but I don't want you anywhere around me, because you being around me triggers me. Then do I really then care for you? Or do I really love you enough to forgive you? Maybe not. Like, maybe I don't love you as deeply as I think that I do, because a real sense of deep love would get you to a place where it's like, I really want this person still around me. I really want this person in my life still. There's things that they've done. There's ways that they have shown up. There's situations that I've been in with them, and I need to learn how to show them forgiveness in this space. I need to learn how to give them grace in this space. And for me, that was with family members. Like, I didn't have an intention of cutting them off. I really wanted to, because with friends, it was like, I'll love you and we don't have to talk ever again. Like, I hope the best, utmost best for you, but I don't want you anywhere near me. Like, that's what I thought forgiveness was. It was like, yeah, I can love you from over there. I'll forgive you so long as we never speak again. And it's like, that's not, Zara, that's not really you showing love though, is it? Like, that's not that's really not forgiveness though, babe, is it? Like, no, it's not. And so I had to, like, okay, when I went through it with family members, it was like, oh, okay, this is different. Can't just cut these people off, or don't have the intention. Like, I really don't want to actually cut them off, but there is parts and parcels, and also boundaries that I didn't uphold for myself, and ways that I wasn't instilling love within myself. And we talked about this in the previous episode. You know, love is also having boundaries and standing up for yourself and your boundaries. And sometimes when you don't have that, people trample all over it, and then you're like, but I still love you, but you've now trampled all over my boundaries. How do I now instill my boundaries, keep them up, and forgive you at the same time as instilling my boundaries? And am I trampling on the love that I give to myself by forgiving you for trampling on my boundaries? And it's hard, having to forgive in love, and forgive and still love, and still show up in love, and still give them love is hard. It's hard. It was hard. It is hard to love someone through things that they don't even realize that they've done to you. Like, love them in spite of how they show up for you sometimes. Love them in spite of how they show you love sometimes. It's really hard. But sometimes with family members, you know, we get to a place where it's like, either I'm going to cut you off, or I'm going to have to give you some forgiveness, give you some grace, and accept that this is who you are, and you actually may never get to a point where you understand how I need to be loved. And so I'm going to put my boundaries back up. I'm going to learn how to instill them a bit stronger, and I'm still going to show you love. I'm still going to give you that sense of forgiveness, like a deep sense of forgiveness, right? And that's not easy. It's not easy, and it has to be consistent. And I think love is consistent. Love is striving for consistency. And I think that's a part that we all kind of miss. Love is striving for consistency. I don't know if it's constantly consistent. I wouldn't say so. Because at the end of the day, while it is action, while it is, you know, showing up in those places, it is emotionally led. We are emotional beings, and love is an emotional feeling that we talk about, that we have, that we receive. So it's a lot of the time based on emotions. In the beginning, it might not always be based on emotions, but a lot of the time in the beginning, it's based on emotions. And the actions that we take are based on those emotions, and how we show love sometimes are based on those emotions. And so it's striving for consistency, striving for that consistency of like how we show up in love, striving for that consistency in how we take action in love, striving for that consistency in how we set our boundaries, striving for that consistency in how we treat ourselves, striving for that consistency in how we show up for others. It's striving for consistency with ourselves. We have to show love to ourselves in a consistent manner, so that we can hold boundaries in a consistent manner, so that we can love others in a consistent manner. It's consistency. And that's where it's like, I didn't really understand this in the beginning. And then today I was writing my list, and I was like, oh, okay. You see that thing where women are like, that saying where women are like, when they really love you, a slight change in action or a slight change in their being of their person that they really love, they'll recognize it straight away. It's like, yeah, something's off with you today. Like, what happened to you? What's going on with you, right? And it's because you love that person so deeply that you've become so attuned to who they are in their being, how they need to be loved in their being, how they show up as how they show up as a person, how they show you love in a being, that a slight change to that, whether it's intimately, romantically, in life in general, a slight change to their being and how they show up and how they show up for you or how they show up for themselves, because you love a person and you even love how they love themselves. A slight change to that is like, something's off with you. Something's wrong with you. And I think we often talk about how women do that, but men do that too. Like, men will know when a woman's not in her bag. Like, a man will know when, well, your man will know, like your person will know, person who's really in tune with you will know, like, when you are not showing love for yourself, when you're not showing up for yourself, because we love people and we also love how they love themselves, right? That's a whole thing. Like, a woman will say, oh, I love how he takes care of himself. A man will say, I love how she takes care of herself. I love how she shows up for herself. I love who she is for herself. And it makes me love her more because of how she shows up for herself, right? So men realize it too, but we often talk about women recognizing as soon as everything's a bit off. And it's because we're so in tune with you that when you're not being consistent in your love, when you're not being consistent in how you show up for yourself, how you love us, we realize it. We're like, oh, he's not. That's an inconsistency. That's an anomaly. We're on this trend. Now this trend is always going to do this. That's what it does. But we're on this trend, and now there's a dot down here. Whoa, what's going on there? Every single day you take out the rubbish for me, whether you are happy, sad, angry, doesn't matter. Today you didn't. Something's wrong. And I feel like we get shunned for that a little bit. I feel like women get shunned a little bit for recognizing the minor differences, but that's what we're supposed to do. Like, that's literally what we're in tuned to do. That's what being in tune with your person is. That's what fully loving someone is. It's recognizing when something's a little bit off. Because, and when I realized that that's literally my job, when I had my son, I recognize if there's a new spot on his face, if there's a new dot, if there's a new scratch, if he's a little bit grumpy than he normally is, if he's a bit whingy, like, I have to be like that. We are made to be fully in tune to our children, our environment, and what's around, so that if there's danger, we can save our child. And if there's anything wrong with our child, we know. Right? And that's because we're so in tune with them. We have such a deep level of love and in tuneness with our child that it's like, he's a bit like this. Okay, cool. He needs a bottle. He's a bit hungry. He needs a this. He needs a that. And our bodies do it, right? Our bodies literally, like, oh, baby's crying. Our boobs start like creating milk. They kind of just know, right? We're made to be like this. And so it's being consistent as parents. Then we get consistent with it. Like, we're constantly on it. Okay, my child needs this, my child needs that, my and we get consistent with it. So it's striving for consistency. Love is always striving for consistency. It's striving for consistency so much so that it recognizes the anomalies all the time. Like, he's off, he's acting off, my partner's acting off, my person's acting off. What's going on here? Let's figure this out, because we're striving for consistency. Yeah. And I watched a podcast about, I think it's consistency as a love language. Yep. And I'll put the podcast below, but I love that podcast. So please go and watch that, because it was really good, the episode. And she was talking about consistency with ourselves. They were talking about consistency with themselves as well, like showing love to ourselves consistently. and not sporadically, like not when we're down, not when things are bad, not when, we're in a place where it's like, okay, now I need to show loads of love to myself and I'll do it artificially. I'll go get a facial, I'll go do it this, I'll go do it that. Like, no. Consistently showing up for yourself and showing love for yourself and your future self. And we talked a little bit about that in the last episode. Like, not love isn't just loving you and giving yourself loads of grace, but it's also loving you now in order to loving the future version of you and putting that future version of you first. Like, what does my future version of me want for me to do right now? And why it may look like what I'm doing right now isn't me loving myself. I know it's me loving myself into that future version of me. It's me loving myself. It's me doing what I need to do right now in order to show that future version of me the most love. Like, being healthy, eating certain things and all of that stuff, so that the future version of me feels even more loved and is in a place of consistent love from me. And that requires you to show up consistently in love and show yourself love consistently. So let me see what I've done. Unconditional love. So let me talk a little bit about unconditional love. So I was talking about, like, I mentioned in the last little bit thing that we talked about that I realized that love was consistency and striving for consistency when I had my child. I also realized that no one can tell me that love cannot be unconditional. Like, absolutely nobody can tell me that love cannot be unconditional. I'll tell you why. I love my child unconditionally. Now, it doesn't mean that there are not things that may occur that I'm like, not necessarily proud of you in that, or, would have preferred you to make this move or that move. But I love my child unconditionally. Now, some people don't. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, every parent loves their child unconditionally. Some people don't. Some parents don't. And that's where you're like, oh, my parent disowned me. My parent did this thing to me. I have the most trauma with my parents. Listen, not everybody is built to show unconditional love. I don't think everybody is built to show unconditional love. It's based on a whole load of things that happened to them, that they've experienced, that, they deal with, and all of those things. But some people are able to show unconditional love. I fully, wholeheartedly believe that. And I think that I think society strives for that because we want marriage, right? And if we're talking about the idea of marriage in the sense of marriage is something that you'll never leave, you won't remove yourself from it, you can't get a divorce, it's with one person for the rest of your life. Wouldn't that require for you to love that person through almost everything and anything that they could possibly go through, or that you two could go through in union in any part of your life? Yeah, so we want marriage to be the end all be all of unconditional love. That's what we want marriage union to be. Like, we want marriage, the union, to be a sense of unconditional love. I am in this marriage, in this union, and it means that I'm creating a sense of security that I'm being unconditionally loved. Now, that's not always how it comes in practice. It doesn't always come with that. And I don't believe that anyone should stay in a marriage where they know they need to leave, or they feel they need to leave, or that they are being, they are receiving a certain type of treatment, all of those things. I don't want to trigger anyone, but you know what I mean, okay? That's not what I'm talking about. I don't think we should stay in any of those things. So I'm saying society feels like this. I don't necessarily agree. No, it's not that. I think it is that we want unconditional love. I think that's what we all necessarily want. We want to know that we are loved. We are loved, regardless of our flaws, regardless of the things that we've been through, regardless of the experiences that we've had, regardless of how we show up, regardless of the things that we find most shameful to ourselves. We want to be loved in spite of that, regardless of that. But that requires us to be vulnerable. And love is also vulnerable. You cannot be loved in spite of all of those things if the person you're with doesn't know all of those things. And that's where it's like, oh, in marriage, you have to tell the person that you're going to be with everything. Like, they need to know everything, because if they're going to get into something, they're going to be with you forever, then they need to know everything about you. And while, yes, that can be something that happens, we also change and evolve as we grow. So while they know everything about me now, I might change and be a whole different person and have different ideas and all those things in 6 months. And so if we're in a marriage, you're going to have to get to know and learn and love that person unconditionally too. And so, what's that going to look like? If I have children, I'm going to become a mum, and so I'm going to change, and you're going to need to fully love me and unconditionally love me in that, and this new identity that I've gained, and all of those things. And we're both just learning as we go. So I don't think the person that you're with is fully ever going to know everything, because those things are constantly going to change. But it requires you to be vulnerable and show up and communicate. This is where I'm at. Like, this is me, and I want you to love me in spite of that. Now, don't just go and trauma dump. That doesn't mean to just go and trauma dump on the person that you care about in hopes that they'll love you anyway. No, but you do have to do it at some point with a person that you fully trust, with a person that you feel secure in, because in order for them to fully love you, and in order for that possibility of unconditional love, regardless of your flaws, regardless of what's going on, regardless of experiences have to happen. Like, you have to experience some stuff with the person that you care for and are with, because you don't know how you're going to experience them. You don't know if you're going to love a person through them until they happen. And that's just a fact. We can all sit here and be like, oh, I will love you through anything. And then anything happens and you're like, oh, maybe not. Maybe I still love you, but I might not be able to love you through it. I may not be able to love you in spite of it. I may not be able to love you and deal with it, right? But I still love you though. I still love you though, right? But it's not unconditional. It's conditional. And so we need to know that there's a difference, one, and then we also need to allow our love to be vulnerable and put ourselves out there and show love daily, and love with ourselves also requires us to be vulnerable. It requires us to see all the versions of ourselves, and see the versions of ourselves that we think aren't worthy of love, and go in and love them too. Love that person too. Love that version of us too. Go in and find that little baby version of us and be like, I love you too. I love you regardless. I love you in spite of all the things that your parents have done to you. I love you in spite of all the experiences that you had as a teenager. I love you in spite of and regardless of anything that you have been through up until this point. I love all the past versions of me, and I love all the future versions of me, and I will love me unconditionally, because we can't show that sense of unconditional love unless we do it to ourselves. And a lot of us are sitting here saying, I love myself unconditionally, but you don't. You love yourself conditionally. Like, you love your own self conditionally. Like, there are conditions to your love. If you do something that you don't think was right, you're beating yourself up about it for 6 months. You can't love yourself unconditionally if you're bullying yourself. Like, that's not funny. That's not funny, Sarah. But it's the truth. Like, how do you show love to yourself unconditionally, regardless of when there's setbacks, regardless of maybe when you don't fully show up how you want to be showing up, or when you get into situations where you feel like you knew better? Like, you have to love yourself through that, And I feel like I did, me specifically, me especially, I feel like me included, like, there were a lot of things that I went through teenage years, and it was like, I knew better. I knew better than to get myself in that situation. I knew better to not show up like that. And went through a period where I was really, really hard on myself, because I knew the type of love that I wanted to show to myself, and I feel like there was a stage in my life where I didn't show that type of love to myself, and it ended me up in situations that I shouldn't have been in, and situations that caused me trauma, and I feel like I could have avoided them. And because I'm always going to say what I could have done better, it was always like, well, Zara, you had free will, so you didn't have to make that decision that got you into that situation where that thing happened. And it's like, yeah, but other people also have free will. Like, other people still have free will. And just because maybe my lapse in judgment caused me into this place, it's not all my fault. It's not all my fault. And I love me regardless of that. I had to love me through it. Otherwise, I'm sitting here, and instead of showing love to that version of me, instead of showing love to that traumatized version of me, I'm telling her, you should have known better. You should have done better. You should have figured it out better. You should have made a better decision. And it's like, that's not what you want to hear. That's not what I would want to tell my daughter. That's not what, if I met a 17-year-old now and she told me she had been through this thing, I wouldn't be telling her, you should have known better. You should have done better. Not at all. Absolutely not. Like, absolutely not. I would be here for her and trying to show her as much love to heal her through it, and tell her that, regardless of our choices, we still deserve to be loved. We still deserve to be loved, And so that's unconditional, like to really be unconditional with ourselves, and then how we're showing love to others. Let me see. I know, I need 5 minutes. I think we've done everything. The last one that I have to say is that love becomes a choice, right? In that sense, within everything that we've talked about, my child is crying. Within everything that we've talked about, love then becomes a choice, right? It becomes a place where we get to decide, in this moment, I'm going to show myself love. In this moment, I'm going to show up for myself. In this moment, I'm going to give myself love. In this moment, I'm going to give this person love. I'm going to choose love in spite of everything that I'm going through. And when it comes down to it, it's a choice. Yes, I said it's a feeling and it's based on emotions. Yes, it is 110%. Also based on our emotions and those things. But at a point, we can choose it. Like, we can choose to show up and love our partners. We can choose to show up and love ourselves. We can choose to put certain things and situations behind us and love us through it. We can choose that, right? And sometimes we have to choose that. Sometimes that's what love becomes. Choosing love daily in all areas. Choosing to still be kind and be sweet and show love, because sometimes we can get into places where the anger takes over and it's like, yeah, I love you, but I'm pissed off right now. And it's like, no, just stick with the, yeah, I love you. Forget the, and I'm pissed off right now. Forget the, but this thing happened. Forget the buts. I love you. And so how would I act if I loved you? How would I show up if I love you? How would I show up if I love me? Like, yes, I'm tired. Yes, I'm exhausted, blah, 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 blah. But I love me. So I'm going to go and wash my face so that tomorrow I don't get so angry with myself that I didn't do it yesterday. Right? It's a choice. And so, I don't know if I've given you 10. I don't know if I gave all 10. I don't know. I'd have to watch this back and figure it out. But these are the 10 things that I've learned in love, lessons that I've learned about love, 10 things that I'm learning in love and that I'm trying to live in love. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed your time within a Black Girl's Orbit. I've been your host, Zara. Please, please, please leave me a comment. Leave me a comment. Leave me a like. Leave me a something. Can we please talk about like your lessons in love? Like, I really want us to talk about what you're learning in love. If you disagree with anything that I've said, any of the lessons that I've given, if you agree with some of them, your experiences, and hopefully someone who's older than me watches this and can be like, yeah, I agree, because like I said, I'm just a little baby. I have so much more to learn, and I know that. But these are just the things that I've learned at this current moment. So I hope you all had a good and happy Valentine's Day. I hope you all feel loved in this moment. I hope you all show yourself some love today if you can, and show your partner some love today. And if you are romantic, go be romantic for your partner. Go and be romantic for your person the way they need you to be, not the way that you want to be. Okay, cool. I'll see you next week. I will see you next week, and then we'll go back to like normal scheduling because we've had 2 love episodes. So next week, something different. Let's switch this up. Okay? I love you all. Bye, bye, bye. Bye, bye, bye. Let me go get my child.